All right. Thank you guys for coming. A lot of faces I remember seeing from last fall. A lot of you attended the open house. I see a lot of the folded up mailers, so it looks like you're in the right meeting because I know we folded those and mailed them out. So that's a good sign that you're in the right place at the right meeting. You are all here because, as you're aware, construction season is starting. Winter was not far behind us, and we're already kicking off construction. So your neighborhood is part of the City of Apple Valley's 2019 street utility improvements. Real quick, I just want to make a couple introductions. Some of you have met us from the fall meetings. I'm Brandon Anderson, the city engineer. Also with us, we've got our Public Works Director, Matt Som. Jody Scheit is our civil engineer that works on staff. Tom Weiss. Tom is probably going to be one of the most important figures you guys will get to know. He will be your construction contact throughout this whole process. He is the liaison between the contractor and kind of everything that goes on. So Tom's a very important figure. We will leave numbers. I'll get to some of the things. This whole presentation will be posted to the website so you can go pull back information. Also, we'll have a video, the YouTube video that walks through a lot of the things we discussed. So I see some taking notes if you want. You don't have to take diligent notes. Hopefully we cover a lot of it for you. Also, with Tom Eberdorf, there's going to be times that Tom might have to get relieved a little bit of his duties. Tim may fill in. Tom's the primary inspector, but we always have a backup, so Tim is kind of that role. Keenan Hayes is the person you're going to want to contact about trees. He is our tree inspector. So he is another person that gets pretty heavily involved in these. And then I think with the timing of the letter, we were in the process of awarding or bidding the project. The project was awarded last week to McNamara Contractors. So Gordon Heller and Tom DeVos are with us in the back of the room. And they were the same contractor. For those of you that watched a lot of the disruption adjacent to you, they were the folks for the cause of that.
But if you're going to have a contractor,
yep. And even though not part of the project, Mayor Mary, for those of you who don't know, is in the neighborhoods. All right, let's get started. What I would like to kind of stress is there's going to be plenty of time for individual questions. Let me cover a lot of the bigger picture stuff. A lot of you have individual questions about your yard. I'll answer almost 90% of your questions except for maybe some specific stuff. Let me run through. We're happy to meet with you individually, talk through stuff, and answer as many questions as possible at the end. It'll make it a lot smoother. So, why are we here? Apple Valley 11th and 12th edition, which is the neighborhood that you're in, was developed in the late 1960s. So that neighborhood is, I believe, 52 years old and has not had any utility replacements done since that time. You're probably well aware of the pavement and the road conditions in comparison to other streets. But what you may not be aware of is what's happening underneath. And the reason why our capital improvement program, which is some of these recons, is focused on the areas that you're in. We have some aging infrastructure. We have sanitary sewer. Currently it's clay pipe. It's roots are penetrating it. You're seeing backups. You're seeing a lot of issues. There's been a lot of fixes. The water main is an old material known as cast iron. It's brittle. You'll probably notice all the patches. You guys have probably seen numerous disruptions for those of you that lived in the neighborhood a long time. Very high water main break area. And then with the pavement aging to the point, the whole thing needs to be reconstructed. There's also a lot of, back 50 years ago, storm sewer wasn't as big of an issue. There's a lot of localized flooding. You'll notice intersections pond up and pool. We always add storm sewer and evaluate a lot of those items when we reconstruct a neighborhood. So that's another part of this that we add in. Not only do we replace sewer and water, streets, curb and gutter, all that, but we also take a look at the storm sewer system. There's also a lot more regulations today than there was 50 years ago. We're doing a better job of treating and addressing stormwater than used to be. So there'll be some improvements there. So like I just said, the scope of work is all new utilities, storm sewer, services from the curb shutoff to the street. That is what the city owns. So from that shutoff out in the street, usually right behind the sidewalk, to the house is yours. We don't replace that. That is private infrastructure that would be your responsibility if you choose to do that at some point, but just so we're clear on our limits. Sidewalk replacement, we do go to wider sidewalks, 5 foot, but we hold the outside edge of the property line and push it in. And then one other item that's going on in the neighborhood is we're adding an 8-foot bituminous trail from Garden View over through on the south side of Baldwin to accommodate a lot of the pedestrian traffic. We did get requests from the school, and pedestrian traffic has increased, so that would create a safer walkway through the park and to connect the neighborhood up. So that was an addition that isn't normally there. Otherwise, your whole neighborhood already has sidewalks, so there's really no changes to sidewalks other than the trail. And then also along the south side of Baldwin, there was some notices that went out along with the early parts of this project where all the roads are narrow. They're 28-foot wide. Our typical city road is a 32-foot wide road. We're bumping the south side of Baldwin over. We've run into our public works director, the police, school, and several have met numerous times regarding parking issues on Baldwin. So one of the solutions that was put out there was to add parking for that to alleviate some of those no parking issues for people in the neighborhoods up. So that is the only 2 changes really from existing other than storm sewer and utility work. So just wanted to touch on that. Project cost, this is approximately $3.5 million construction project. And I really want to key in on something very important as part of this project, not just nuts and bolts. You know, like I mentioned, we bid and awarded the project for 2019 construction, so it's under contract to start. Funding for this project is derived from the city's road improvement tax levy, so you are not assessed. There are no assessments. There are no costs to the residents. This is something our mayor and city council has pressed as a very important element to the city of Apple Valley. We do like to stress that because sometimes that's confusing to people that move here. That's a hard concept to get a hold of, and it's actually very rare that cities do not assess for this level of work. So there are no special assessments, just to be clear. We have had people come to meetings and want to know what it's going to cost or what their assessments, and we have to reiterate that is an important goal of the city of Apple Valley to maintain.
And so if anybody hasn't been at the meeting, like your next door neighbor, please just remind them, because sometimes they don't believe it, but it's really true. Yeah.
That's a key point. So project area, you've got the mailers, we've got maps. The project limits are Baldwin up to Elm, over to, I forgot the street on the one side already. Hopewell. Everything in between. So with that, a lot of the things that we want to get into tonight are scheduling, some of the construction sequence, some of the things that we just want to point out that's going to happen. A little bit of a backup to the project schedule. We had an initial project meeting back in November. That was to introduce the project, have an open house, gather feedback. We got a lot of mailers back from residents, great feedback. We take all that feedback, incorporate it into the design of what we're doing, and then we go through the design process. And then we have to publicly bid it, so we put it out to bid. Once we get those bids, we take those bids, and then our city council would have to approve the contract if the pricing is within what we budgeted, which it was. So back on March 28th, the project was awarded to McNamara. We mailed residents your notices out on March 20th. So these happen pretty fast. We usually like to mail after the award, but because of the schedule and the way the timing of city council meetings, sometimes we're jumping ahead. Your notices went out March 20th, so we could get to this meeting as quick as we could today. We try to schedule this as early as we can right after the award, just to give people time to react, give us time to communicate. Everybody needs time on this stuff, and it's just part of the process. So, neighborhood meeting tonight, that's where we're at. We will start coordinating a lot of detailed stuff behind the scenes with small utility, our city staff, our public works, utilities, all that stuff starts to really dive into details. We have what's called a pre-construction, where we start outlining the rules and all the stuff that needs to occur between us and the contractor. That'll happen next week. We're planning for construction to begin April 15th. So what the contractor, that's the date that we anticipated. It's in our specifications. The first thing that's going to happen is trees. So, and then we also have the construction completion before freeze up about November 15th. All right, so the things that people, when I talk to the schedule, I'll talk a little bit in detail, but project phasing. So you guys you should have gotten a map with the phasing and you know where you live. The first phase of the project, we're calling it 1A and 1B, which is mostly Baldwin. So the very first phase that we're going to start in is Baldwin, but as part of the overall schedule, one of the things that we do, trees impact everybody right from the beginning. So we cut all the trees that are required to be cut in the right of way, right away. And it's, Jordan, was that a 2 or 3 week process?
Yeah, it'll take 1 week, week and a half to cut, and then we'll come back and grow stubs.
Okay, so that's the entire project area. That's not by phase. That's all the trees in the area. So just so you're aware, I want to be really clear on that because sometimes that leads to confusion. We do have to clear trees in the right of way all in one phase. And that is scheduled to start April 15th. And then once that's done, then we'll start. So here's the phasing. I'm going to kind of get to the text because it's hard for me to. So,
Brandon,
yeah.
just touch on the trees with the utility conflict.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. So some of the trees are going to be impacted by the utilities. We replace the curb stop in the driveway or in the yard, somewhere in the driveway. But if there's a tree there that the contractor isn't willing and understandably to work under, that tree may need to go. So as we go through, we'll be marking them and we'll have those discussions as it comes up.
Can we suggest a tree that they might
You want to know what? We'll take a look at some of those trees. Meet with Tom after this.
Okay.
If it's an issue,
We can't get into the business of cutting private trees up in the yards.
Right.
You know, we do need to contain our work to what is in the right way. There's times that it is marginal. Otherwise, we're going to start getting requests to cut everybody's trees that are. So we will look at it if it's within reason in the scope of work. But if you need a backyard tree, we just can't do that. I was going to get to the tree details when I got to the map. All right. No, that's all right. So work on phase 1A and 1B is going to occur. The goal is to have that done by June 7th with 1A. And phase 2, these are just some guideline dates. So if you live in these areas, from now till June 7th is phase 1. Phase 2 is going to be from approximately June 7th to July 9th, plus or minus weather. A lot of things play into this. Dates do fluctuate, but this is what we use as a guideline. It's late April snowfalls. Yep. So this is a guideline. It's not hard dates. We do try to hold to this, but it also gives us something to shoot for phasing the project. And the reason we do this is we don't want to go in and tear up every single street and make it a mess everywhere. We do have to allow traffic in and out, disruption, parking, so that's why we phase it. And we set these dates to kind of the most efficient amount of work that can be done during that time. And that's why we do it. So these are guidelines that we'll use. So if you have events, or if you live up in phase 3, you'll get disruption through the course of the whole project, but the really heavy disruption will be in the window of time that you're in here, just to be clear. All right, so this is just a little more detailed level of that. That was kind of the high level. So April 15th, tree removals and right-of-way, all phases. April 29th, we're tentatively starting to remove bituminous, the roadway and driveway aprons in the phase 1 area. And then we'll start working on temporary water connections. So what happens at that point, and the weather sometimes plays into temporary water because we can't have real freezing nights. And it's hard to predict if that's really going to occur at the end of the month, but that does play into it. So the temporary water connections, keep in mind, we have to tear out a water main and put it back in. So in order for you to have water every single day with minimal disruption, we put in a temporary water system, which is typically, I'll show you a picture in a second, but there'll be some piping laid on the ground behind the curb that feeds everybody's house, and Tom was going to start coordinating that. So one of the key items that I'll get to in a second is coordination of connecting that temporary water system to your house so you're not disrupted. Right around the May timeline is when probably, weather dependent again, we got to get that stuff, we got to get the roadway picked up, the trees out of the way, temporary water connections in, and then they'll start with some of the heavy digging. sometime around that May timeline. And that's in phase one. This is really the detailed on phase one. May, at the same time, CenterPoint Energy Gas and all those are going to start relocating at the same time. They are likely, they don't do phases. For the gas company and all the other small utility companies, they kind of have to do everything. They'll be heavy, they're kind of in our way during the heavy digging, but they do have to work in the rest of it. So some of you in the other phases will see some small utility relocates just ahead of us. So that starts to occur. And then, like I said, with the big picture, those are some of the tentative dates for you on phasing. So if you know where you live, you kind of have an idea when the real heavy stuff is going to start for you. During this whole process, one of the keys, we're going to be notifying you in advance. And in advance can mean 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, 7 day. It's going to vary depending on the type of work. But you are going to receive a lot of notifications from Tom. Door hangers, we've always found we use websites and social media. We've done a whole bunch of stuff. The most effective to this day, even in a day of technology, is to put something on your front door as fast as we can is still the most effective for means. So a lot of you probably go in and out of your house to your garage, and you may not even use the front door. We communicate to Tom what your needs. Tom's still going to do that, but if you have an individual need, let him know. Communication is key. Go to Tom. Go to Tom. Go to Tom for everything you can. You're going to see a lot of notices. There's going to be just different notices that when we're pouring concrete, maybe you can't get in your driveway for a little bit, or this deep excavation, so you're going to have to not be in the 200 feet of roadway for an 8-hour time, or there's going to be a variety of notices for you guys. But Tom will be notifying you pretty regular. You're going to see a lot of them, and that's the key. We want to communicate with you in advance of things over and over, and if there's an issue, Tom's going to be the person you're going to want to communicate with, and he's going to communicate back. I mean,
Go on the website.
you can go on the website. Usually website, we post weekly. It's not daily. It just...
Last year what we've done is after we hand out the notice, we'll go ahead and put it on the website. So, if you see your neighbor's got a notice and you don't, and you want to know what's going on, you can go to the website and it'll be there.
Yeah. So a lot of the notices are redundant, but we have to have redundancy in communication because everybody has different means of how they would like it. And we just don't have the resources to be individual to everybody. So that's the stuff that we'll do. Once again, I can't overstress, go to Tom, contact him if you have concerns. If you have a doctor's appointment, if you have something going on, let these guys know. Jordan and Tom with McNamara have done a great job accommodating driveway entrance if there's some. We do the best we can. We can't let you in and out all the time, but if you communicate, at least they're aware of the issue, and we do our best. So that's key on both ends. So communications, again, we will update. Website, door hangers are the key. Tom's number, we'll keep putting that out there, but go to Tom, and Tom will help you. So I'll leave that up for next second, but this will be posted on the web too, so if you want to go there, it's there.
And my number will be on every notice you get. You'll get my number over 100 times this summer.
He wasn't on the microphone, but over 100 times you'll get Tom's. Yeah. All right. That's kind of the bigger picture stuff, but some of the tree removals I touched on in the right-of-way with the whole neighborhood at once. We have a map that shows that. Jordan, Tom with McNamara and Tom and Keenan will go around one more time. If there is a tree that we didn't identify in the design that is borderline, or we feel, okay, these guys are nervous about that we've shown limits, we will work that out right away, and we would contact the residents that may be impacted. Sometimes that happens that we might not identify it in the design, but they're nervous about it, and we don't always know that, but we do our best. Temporary water inspections. Tom put together a sign-up sheet. One of the key things I'd like to point out, the city hires a plumber to make the temporary water connection. That's a direct hire by us. Please do not work with anybody else. Please coordinate everything through Tom. We don't want separate contractors in this. This is a direct hire by us as part of the project. Our plumbing contractor hired by us for this project will work with you to make a temporary water connection. There are some building code issues that we have to abide for backflow prevention and just making sure it's done correctly on a temporary water system. Tom would like to start setting those for the whole neighborhood as soon as possible. He's got some time set up. Try to do that right away, because then we can go in there. He'll work directly with the plumber, make sure it's only with Tom and the plumber, that we don't have anybody else doing that, and start getting those set up, because that's key to us setting up that temporary system. So Tom's got those notices here, and then he's going to keep working with people to get that done so we can get that temp water system set up. I was going to go to the meters in a sec, but go ahead.
Okay, well, so for the sign up, what I have is starting Tuesday the 9th through Friday, everything from I think we start at 8 till noon for those days. I understand that days don't work for everybody, but that's kind of what we want to get started with. That way when the plumber's out there, he's out there for a good amount of time instead of running back and forth from other jobs. So that's where we're at now, but PM times are available, and as we move forward, just reach out and we'll get that accommodated.
Temporary water's got to get hooked up typically to a sill faucet if we can. Sometimes there's not. A sill faucet, your outside spigot. Sometimes it's a problem. Just like I said, there's some plumbing code issues with every individual house. You're dealing with houses that are aged. Yep. So we have to kind of evaluate each house as we make that connection. And once in a while, the plumber has to get in the house. I do want to point out, a lot of you are also getting mailers about water meter replacement. One of the things that we are coordinating with our Public Works Department, that's not something that engineering is doing, but our Public Works, we are not going to do this neighborhood change out water meters at the time of this, because it's absolutely confusing. Public Works is working on a detailed schedule for the whole city. We are not going to install the meters during the time of construction. It's a logistical nightmare for us to try to coordinate construction, deal with the issues with that, and then also try to have you folks coordinate that change out. It's really completely separate, so we're going to avoid that confusion by not having meters put in. After this construction project's done, the water meter program's a 2-year program. I know a lot of people have volunteered to have meters put in already. We're going to still work through that schedule, but we don't want to be introducing 93 homes to the meter program during construction. We don't want to risk. We have a tight timeline from April to November to get this done, and if we start running into delays because of some internal plumbing issue with the water meter, that really causes some issues on scheduling. So just so you're aware on that. They are two separate issues, and we've got to treat them as that. So Tom will be coordinating that on the water hookups. The removals I kind of mentioned, and the sanitary and water typically go in first, because they're the deepest. We got to dig the deepest trenches first. And then, depending on the depth of the storm sewer or the services to each home and replacing those can intermix just depending on depth. So what you're going to see occurring is you're going to see us trenching numerous times. Tom and Jordan are going to go through the street, and you're going to see them trench. They're going to backfill it, and then all of a sudden they're going to come back and do it again later, and you're going to be like, why? That is the most efficient way to install pipe. We can't put it all in at once because there's no way to hold pipes up in open trenches. So you're going to see that process a lot. Just when you got one deep hole in front of your house, you're like, yes, I'm done. No, you're not done. It's going to keep reoccurring, so just be patient with that. I do have to mention that because it's something we take for granted as engineers that deal with this a lot, but a lot of folks have not seen that or been a part of it. So it is part of the process. Once the utilities are in, then what we do is excavate the street. So there's a lot of poor soils between the pavement and that. We'll excavate those and get those out of there. And that's really from the back curb to the back of curb, and we'll do that by phase. Then we replace that material with a new aggregate base. Nothing's changing on the street width, so we're keeping all that, the 28 foot. Once the aggregate base is down, then we have to pour curb and gutter. One of the things I want to point out, currently you have the rollover curb and gutter, it's kind of flat. All of our city streets in the neighborhoods that exist have been changed to what's called a B-style curb. It's the stand-up curb. So we'll have a nice drive apron and a nice opening. It makes plowing and parking and maintenance much easier than the rollover stuff. So it is a big change, and it does function a lot better. So in the older neighborhoods where people aren't moving driveways like new neighborhoods where you don't know where they're at, this is a common changeover. Sidewalks, like I mentioned, they're going to be 5-foot replacement instead of existing 4, and it's held to the inside of the road, so it won't be encroaching back into towards the house side. It'll be encroaching towards the street side. 5 foot is actually, we can get by with 4 foot for ADA, but 5 foot maintains better. You can walk by people without feeling scrunched. 4 foot gets really tight, and you know how it is in the winter when you don't fully snow plow it or use your snow blower on it. It gets narrow. 5 foot is nice to get by, so it is an improvement. And we hear a lot of people do. It's hard at first, like, oh, I got to shovel more sidewalk, but in the end, actually, it is a much better amenity to the neighborhood. Driveways will be replaced per our city standards in the right-of-way. So basically, from the back of sidewalk to the street, it'll be our city standard. If it's bituminous, it'll be a city standard bituminous. If it's concrete, it'll be a concrete replacement. There are instances where, because of the grade or because of the curb stop location where the shutoff is, that we have to dig outside of the sidewalk into your driveway. Whatever is from the sidewalk in, we will replace in kind. So if you have a paver driveway, for example, if you have a paver driveway from your garage to the street, we will replace the city standard concrete from the sidewalk in, and if we disrupt it from the sidewalk towards your house, we will replace it in kind, or the paver or bituminous or concrete or colored. That's been our policy. Like I said, anything in the city property is city standard, just for longevity and consistency, and we have to replace it. So that's something we do. But if you do have something special, we'll replace it if we disrupt it outside the sidewalk or outside a right-of-way. Once the driveways and curbs are in, then we pave it. Then once we get that first course of base pavement down, then it doesn't always work in this order, depends on the contractor kind of pushing us. But we like to restore sod and stuff after that first base course. It's a lot easier on equipment. We don't like to do that after the wear course is down, after the finished pavement. Their equipment and everything working on sod is much easier when it's just base course. So with restoration, we restore everything sod. The contract, you'll get notices, regular notices from the time that it's laid. The contractor is responsible for watering and maintenance for 45 days. When that 45 days is up, Tom will be sending a notice saying, hey, the period's over for the contractor to maintain it. Now it's your turn to maintain it. So those are key things that from a communication side that we do. But it is their responsibility according to our specs for the first 45 days. So watering and maintenance happen then. Trees, we typically put trees in the final wear down at the whole neighborhood at the end, not by phase. It's just easier. A lot of times in the middle of summer when we're in phases, it's not the appropriate time to plant trees. They get stressed and die, and it's difficult. So we tend to put the trees in all at the end. One thing I want to stress about trees, we do have a warranty on trees, but certain neighborhoods, maybe not this one, we don't warranty trees, and it's not fair to the contractor, and it's not fair to the city to pay for replacement for deer and animal damage. We have run into instances where we've had neighborhoods wipe out lots of trees because of deer, and that's a hard thing to put the onus on the city or the contractor to say somebody's got to eat that. So what we do ask is please protect them. You're getting replacements, and there's only so many things we could do financially to address this. I'm not hearing there's a deer problem in your neighborhood, but it does occur. You'd be surprised at how these wonderful new trees taste, and they migrate their way to them. So I just want to, that's a key item. So the tree removal map, here is, if your house is in one of the yellow, we've identified it, that there's a tree in the right-of-way that'll need to be removed. This is something that you can talk with Keenan and Tom about after if you have concerns about that. We do have the one-to-one replacement that we offer for those. We like those planted outside of the right-of-way on the replacement. Keenan has a sheet for the species, very critical. As some of you may read the news, the city of Apple Valley has emerald ash borer. It is an invasive species. One of the things that I think our natural resources group does a great job is they promote diversity of trees. We don't want to go back into the neighborhood and plant one type of species over and over, because there's the risk at some point you could wipe everything out. Like emerald ash, you'll see areas of town that like the whole area has to be cut. Keenan and his group has a great list of diversity of trees that work well. So that's a nice, think about that when you do your replacement. Get those forms back into Keenan. It is nice. We have a contractor that we have a nursery list, so we got to make sure all that stuff's available early. The earlier, I think you had May 1st.
Yep.
the sooner we can get what you want for a species, then we can make sure we get all that stuff addressed with our contract with them. But
You'll be out at the Eastview High School at the Home and Garden Show on Saturday.
Saturday, yep.
Right?
yep, so Keenan's also at the Home and Garden Show Saturday, so you can hit him up for trees then too. And he can sell his tree sale that the city offers if you don't have a replacement but would like one. The tree sale is a great place on our website that you can go get a really pretty discounted tree through the city of Apple Valley for replacement on your own if you want, outside of what we're doing, but it's a great program. So the tree map, this is actually a good item to discuss individually. I do want to point out we are having, to the trail and the parking, there's a few trees on the south side of Baldwin between the school and the Baldwin homes that'll have to be removed, but we are doing a landscape plan that replaces that. A lot of them are emerald ash, so they're likely going to have to go anyway, so I know they're a bigger canopy, but they have some invasives, so we're going to replace those with diversity when we do the trail.
Are those lilacs? No. The lilacs?
I don't believe so.
No? Oh, good.
No, there is a couple trees in there that we can walk through in detail. I don't remember each specific one,
Right.
but yeah,
Are the yellow dots the ones you're referring to?
yeah. And we've got a more detailed plan that shows some of the ones that have to go. Tree replacement forms, Keenan's got those here. Make sure you get those in. Those are important. I do want to get into just some of the contractor items, more than just the specifics of the schedule. We do have working hours, Friday 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. That's equipment running, disruptive activities, Saturday 8 to 5. No Sundays and holiday work allowed. There are times that we do grant a little variance. There's been instances where if there's a large prediction of rain, say like on a Wednesday, and these guys are in a really tough digging spot, we're going to make a decision to allow it to go. Tom will communicate. Sometimes we just have to bend the rules, but it's for the benefit of everybody. If we don't allow them a little bit of extra working time, we could have bigger issues. So there is time that we flex, but we only flex if we have to. If you have concern about noise, talk to Tom. You know, this is going to be a noisy, disruptive construction project, but talk to Tom and communicate that to him. We do have instances where it isn't working, but everybody does their best to keep this thing going. Like you said, we've got a short time frame, and it can be disruptive. We're not going to sugarcoat the fact that it's a disruptive summer season. Any segment of street under construction may be closed as per working hour limits. Driveways, we like to get ramped and accessible by the 7 p.m. at the end of each day. So that's something that if they're digging a section of sanitary sewer in, by the end of the day, it needs to be backfilled, covered so that you can get in. We do everything we can to do that. There have been times that, whatever circumstance, we haven't, but they will make every effort to get that done so people can get in and out. Concrete work is really one of the exceptions. There's some curing time on concrete that we just can't let you drive on it. So we will notify you of when those times are, and you may have to park outside of your drive, or Tom will notify you, hey, today's the day to get your car out, or leave it in for an extended time. He will work with you on those sort of issues when they come up individually. So there's going to be some times that we just, you can't drive on the concrete for a few days, and that's to everybody's benefit with longevity. We tend to not want the pavement removed any sooner than a week prior to utility work starting, because we don't want long periods of time that the road is not a hard surface. We do have to control those sort of elements, so we try to keep, that's why we phase it and have all these rules in place, but we want you guys to know that too. Small utility companies, the gas, electric, they will be working to relocate utilities ahead of us. One of our biggest delays on projects is having their stuff in the way. So they will be working in all phases to get out of the way. We can't have gas crossings and things in our way when they work. It slows things down, and it's dangerous. So they will be working throughout the whole project. One of the bigger items that have come up, and this is kind of a critical one that Tom will work with you to coordinate, private items in the right-of-way, such as your irrigation systems, dog fences, shrubs, pavers, they need to be removed by the residents prior to construction. The city's not responsible for the cost to relocate privately owned facilities that are in the right-of-way. Their staff will send a notice to the property owners ahead of that scheduling of when that stuff needs to occur. We give you as much time as we can give you to work through that. We understand that's a challenge sometimes to move things. Irrigation tends to be the biggest item. If you have shrubs or bushes or something that you want to take that just need to go away, make sure you communicate that to Tom, that it just gets dug up. Otherwise, do your best to get it out of the way in advance, and we will give you advance notice. In order to maintain not having special assessments, that is a cost that the city just can't keep reabsorbing if it's not public infrastructure in that right away. So that's a big item, and that always brings most of the questions at the end is the coordination of the irrigation, dog fences, miscellaneous stuff, but that's stuff that we can talk with you individually about. I do need to make a point about safety and access. This is a work zone. This will be disruptive. It's going to be noisy. There will be trucks. There will be dust. There will be vibrations and noise. Please make Tom aware. Sometimes we have special facilities or daycares or special needs. Sometimes people need access with special vans that ride low. There's all kinds of circumstances. Please communicate all those sort of things to Tom. The more we're aware, the better we can accommodate. So if there are special needs, let us know. Please watch your speed. Most of the issues we have are residents in their own neighborhood with speed and cut through. With the school here, we do run into instances. These streets aren't as probably bad for speed and cut through as last year's neighborhood just because of the way it is. Baldwin may be a problem that gets high use. Please watch your speeds, It helps with dust. It kind of helps with everything. So everybody needs to kind of work together through this. Please watch children and pets. They all escape. Children are drawn to large equipment. They love it. Please keep an eye. We've had instances where it's unfortunate that, kids and pets are out in this stuff. Please be responsible and help with that. It's not our job to police those, but like I said, pets and kids get out. And we have run into some scenarios that have been tough, so we have to just let residents know, please be aware of it during construction. Parking, we are going to make a strong effort to provide access to your driveways and get you in and out. Construction work will not be in every location in the neighborhood at one time, so there's going to be some hopping around for where you need to park, where you need to get in and out. We've staged it to avoid having the whole thing disrupted. Tom will be providing residents, he'll be providing parking maps and all those sort of things on a regular basis to let people know where and when they can get in and out. That's a key one. We do, just so residents are aware, fire, police, public works, MVTA, ISD 196, all of those are on our weekly notices and email correspondence. They're always alerted to all these changes. Every time we've got pretty extensive communications behind the scenes as well as with you folks. So you'll see a lot of those maps kick out again on those locations. New LED streetlights are going to be installed, so we're replacing the streetlights with new LED throughout. We did that on the last one. As we've gone through reconstructs, we are updating the electric system as well. City plumbing contractor, I kind of talked to this earlier. So this is something that you'll work with Tom. One of the questions that come up, with temporary water, it's on the water system, everything's disinfected, everything works the same. You might see a slight decrease in pressure or flow just because it's a temporary system. We haven't really run into issues with somebody not having adequate water. We have run into slight temperature variations. Obviously, if the pipe is sitting out in somebody's front yard with no shade, it might heat up before it goes in instead of being at 55 degrees buried underground. Little things like that we notice, but nothing really unusual, too far unusual. Sometimes when we work with the plumber on just making the connection to make sure that backflow preventer and the system works on a temporary system, we have run into instances with water softeners. They may need to be bypassed just because we've had them fail. So we ask that they bypass during a temp system. Little things like that Tom and the plumber will work with you on. Billing. Unfortunately, just because you're on temporary water, not on the main city system, doesn't mean you don't get a water bill. During the time of the temporary connection, Tom works with our billing coordinators. We just average out the same address for the previous 2 years, not just a single year. We take 2 years' data, average that out to have an average water bill. So no one's relieved from their water bills for a short period of time. whatever time you're on the temporary water.
Yep, yeah, we'll keep track of when you go on temporary water and when you come off.
So we don't do it for the whole duration of the projects, only during the time that you're on temporary water. Garbage pickup. Garbage pickup is Tuesdays, and the contractor is responsible for the refuge hauler or the garbage company accessibility to the container. So if it's under construction, your duty is to take the garbage out as you normally would. It is nice to get it out the night before. I understand that this is an early pickup. Help them out because they have a system. You will get the same garbage can back. They have a system to make sure that your garbage gets to the refuge hauler. Your job is to get it to the end of the driveway like you normally do. And the contractor's responsibility is to make sure that the garbage hauler can get it away. It is a lot of coordination in the background, but it's important for you guys to understand that everything still functions. It just might be a little disruptive for a bit. Mail is the other difficult one. We are going to provide a temporary mail delivery setups. We are working with the United States Postal Service. They tend to dictate the terms of the mail. We don't always have answers at this time, but we will work with them. They don't deliver in a construction zone. So there'll be some temporary mailbox set up, and I'll show you a map of where it worked from previous. They haven't finalized it, so it may move, but at this point we've got a couple locations. FedEx, UPS, all the private carriers will still deliver. We have not run into a scenario where they have not. Deliveries have increased dramatically since we've been doing Reconstruct with Amazon and everything. And a lot of people have sensitive stuff. If you're concerned about your mail, you could get your own post office. People have done that. They could stop for short periods of time. They've done different things. We've also found that the post office offers an online tool. Theft has occurred with mail. It's not just in a construction zone. Mail theft is a common thing, but people have a higher alert because it's a construction zone and we've got a temporary band of boxes. Our police gets notified of it. We do keep an eye on it, but I would like to say that, there's an informed delivery service that's an online. You can sign up through the USPS where you get an email every single morning with a picture of every item of your mail that's to be delivered that day. If you would like that and it makes you feel better that, you're going to a temporary box, it is a lot of people have said in the past, it's a great tool to feel reassured about your mail. So we have put that out there. Our police department was kind of promoting this for a couple years too because they noticed that it helped with theft. So that's why we're bringing it back up. We haven't really had instances, but people get nervous when you have a box, a band of mailboxes in one spot. So we like to put that out there. Temporary mailbox locations by phase. So the post office has not signed off on this yet, but what we found is they want to stay out of the construction zone. They need a safe place to pull up, not in front of somebody's driveway. So when we put the band of mailboxes by phase, it has to be in a place that it's safe also for residents to pull up, get out, get their mail without disrupting people's front yards. So the two locations that were identified were one that we used last year on the corner lot that worked really well. Cars could stack up. It really wasn't disruptive. And then there's a side lots up around the corner from Lowell that worked. So those are tentative for now. Tom will get you a very detailed map as we get that going, and we will provide that to you. So at this, 3 and 4 is down below. The reason 1 and 2 is up, the pointer doesn't show it very well, but it's up at the corner there. And the reason being is when we're disrupting phase 1, all of those folks on phase 1 and 2 need to be, and we like to leave them there as long as possible. We don't want to move mailboxes repeatedly. We try to get duration so that you're going to the same place. It's disruptive for the postal carriers and it's disruptive to the residents to keep moving boxes around. And it's costly for us because we have to pay for all those moves. Yep, I'm going to get to that. So, contractor will take it down. They give that back to you. That is your possession. They don't store it. The reason we don't, or have the contractor store it is it's damaged, or I didn't get it back in the condition that went out. So Tom and Jordan, you guys give them back. You guys store your personal possession. Yep.
Can I take my own down?
Yep, if you want to. We put the temp.
Find out when they're going to do that
Yep.
so we can take them down.
Yep, that's by phases. So when we, Typically, yes. Typically, yes. Some cases, the Postal Service will let us move them partway, depending on the phasing, but we always tell people it's there for almost the duration. I don't want to tell you that we're going to keep moving them, but usually it's a longer time frame. Those were the bigger items I had. I know Jordan wanted to mention one thing about vibrations in construction. His insurance company, one of the biggest items that always comes up is vibrations and damage. So, Jordan, I don't know, maybe you.
Yeah.
All right.
Evening, everyone. Thank you again for coming. Looking up on the map for vibrations, as Brandon had mentioned, we will be digging past your house a number of times. You wonder why. It's all part of the process, but you will feel vibrations in your house. And I always liken it to fireworks on the 4th of July. When you're out watching fireworks, you see it, you hear it, you feel it, but it's far enough away where it doesn't harm you. And similar to what's on the map where you see the actual zone in the red and then a perception zone in the yellow, where if you're in your kitchen and you feel it, it's perfectly normal. The techniques that we use are industry norms, not just here, but statewide. So if you do have any other questions, I'll hang out a little bit afterwards. Otherwise, Tom is the main point of contact in the field.
And just so you're aware, what we do before the project begins even, we video, photograph, log everything that we're disrupting ahead of time. We do get claims for damage. Jordan's right, vibrations is one of them that comes up a lot. Cracked sidewalks, sidewalks get replaced, but cracked driveways. You know, we'll document that stuff. If we damage it, obviously we're going to replace it, but if it's something that was there, we just can't fix everything. Otherwise it becomes open-ended. So we do document a lot of things in advance. I do want to kind of show you just some pictures of some of the things I discussed, and then after that we can open it up for questions. This was the neighborhood before. Obviously you can see where there was patching. You can see the pavement deteriorating, the old style curb. This is starting to tear right after removal of sidewalk, removal of things. You can see it is difficult to get in and out. Rainy days, it's tough, it's dusty, it'll challenge you some days. I'm not going to state otherwise. You can see the temporary water that they run through the boulevard to make connections to each house. There's barricades. So that it gets to be a mess. It gets even messier as we keep doing more. You can start to see some of the depths and some of the things that go on in the street. So these are periods of time that, like we mentioned, there might be segments of the roadway that we got to get this stuff in. We got to block it off. We'll notify you. This is the things that are occurring as to why you can't get it out, but you got to give us time to get it in there.
We're living at the beach.
Yep. You know, the nice thing is this is when it's done. I mean, this is when I mentioned the city standard sidewalk and drive entrance. The B curb, you can see it, the stand-up, sod, restoration, all those kind of things. It will be a long summer. It goes fast, though. Surprisingly, it goes fast. We all commented it was a year ago to one day that we were here having the same conversation for last year. So time flies. Communication is the key. If you guys have concerns, communicate it, and we're going to communicate all these things as much in advance. I don't think I missed a whole lot of bigger picture stuff.
On that last picture, that is the approach. Every address will get that approach.
Unless you have a bituminous driveway.
Even if you have a bituminous driveway.
Oh,
You have a sidewalk that goes through everything.
Oh, that's right. So
So,
everything will be a concrete apron out front is what we're doing. Consistency. So with that, you know, you can ask questions of us up here. You can grab Tom individually. You can look at the maps. We'll leave it open. Really, that's what we wanted to get to, was give you the overview and then open it up.
Brandon, the United States Postal Service has mailboxes that have keys. Do you know anything about that? I mean, we have some in part of our neighborhood, and do you know anything about
Yeah, the question, if you didn't hear the question, it was the mailbox, like the community boxes. Some of them don't have individual, but they have the lock boxes. The Postal Service, really, we don't. They dictate the mail, and I'm not sure, Matt, if we run into a scenario where we're able to request what the post office has put
I
in.
was just thinking if
The only,
I'm not saying that everybody wants to do it, but if there were a lot of people that wanted to do it, thinking about the future and mail and security, you know.
Well, we did run into that last year with
Yes.
one of the mailboxes on Lowell Drive. And what happens is the post office will let you get together and purchase one of those. It really has nothing to do with the city.
Okay.
It would all be through the
But-
post
right,
office.
so it's not
If
the
that's
same.
something, yeah, but if that's something you choose.
So Mary, to answer your question, what we ran into last year with the post office is if Baldwin Circle wanted to get together and purchase a community box, it sounds like the postal service is amenable to that, but they're not gonna go pay for a box just to put a box in. So that's an option for a group.
Parking on Baldwin Drive, since you're doing the bump outs, parking on that side, I'm assuming there's no parking on the north side now of Baldwin?
So your question about parking on Baldwin. All the streets in the neighborhood are 28 foot wide, which doesn't allow for parking. Our typical city street that allows for parking is 32 feet. It's really not a bump out. We've made that section of Baldwin a standard street section which would allow parking. So the south side, we're allowing parking. Where the residents are on the north side, it's restricted parking during the hour, certain, I can't remember, Matt, what the resolution was.
On the north, I've got one here. On the north side, it's not changing. So I think right now the signage says from May, is it May to August, 5 to 9 weekdays, that there's no parking, but other than.
You're gonna let them park, can you park on the other side, the south side though?
Yes, after this project, because we're widening it just by the park, from yeah, Baldwin Circle to Lowell Drive.
People over, I seriously have people park in my yard, because they can't park on the street, it's stupid.
We-
Yeah.
we-
Yeah, so-
Seriously, park in my yard, I don't know where else to tell them to park.
So with this project, they'll be able to park on the south side.
That the
by
previous
park. So it
didn't
will
allow any
more
parking on the south, so this actually creates more parking, which should free up some of the issues you're concerned. And that was part of the meeting that we had with our police department, the school, and everybody to find a solution. We know over the years, there's been parking concerns from the neighbors, and that's why there's all these different parking restrictions. So this was what was decided to address all of those issues.
And the safety for kids running out, you know.
Yep.
at the ball.
But the first part of Baldwin, where the lilac trees are, from Garden
Oh,
Hill
that's-
to Lowell, there's no parking on the
Stay,
side.
Yeah,
and
that will
Stay
stay.
there.
That
That will
stays-
stay.
We won't have any extra parking.
No.
Correct, not if you're on the east
So
side.
then we still got park in our yard.
Well, yeah, not on, yeah, on the south side,
Or
no.
I still park in my yard.
Down the street.
Gas interruption. The gas company will work on the services. There is a little bit of disruption as they work through. Tom, you,
Right, yeah, through the utility company themselves. So if, I probably won't be there. But if something does come up, just give me a call and we'll address it. So, short of any other inconvenience. As far as, it'll be just if they're reconnecting or disconnecting your existing line. So for them, I think the turnover is 20 minutes, you know, so it'll be something like that.
no, they all do temporary. So they do, depend on how they lay the sewer, but there'll be no disruption to the sanitary sewer. The only once in a while, just to make these connections with temp water and some things, and then there'll be minor disruptions with water, but nothing overnight that we plan for. During the phase that you're working under construction, so they'll get that in place right away, they'll get the sewer and water laid, then we gotta disinfect, get stuff out of the way. They don't like the temporary water in their way when they go to do sidewalks and all the other work, so they want to get it out of there as quick as they can. We kind of assumed 6 to 8 weeks, and that was the longest duration of each phase, that temporary water may be in place, but like I said, they'll set it up and get the work done and get it out of there, so. Depends on the phase length.
The mailbox, you remove them, I mean, do you put it back then? And also, if it's like ours are like 30 years old, do we purchase the whole new mailbox, or what? Do we wanna do?
You would purchase a new one.
Okay, but they'll put the old one back up? Or we
You guys were putting, if people replaced them in the past, and you would just put the new pole in. Whatever we take out, we gotta replace. It's not always the same one if we give it back to you, but we do replace. Now, that doesn't mean we go and pour a masonry footing and you know, something more extravagant than that was there or an obstruction, but we'll put it back.
Would it be what we have, right?
Yeah.
Because mine is not normal.
Define not normal.
Well,
We've seen a lot of not normal ones.
Finger is what it is with the mailbox.
Yeah, it gets taken down, gets handed back to you, it's your personal property, and then we'll put that one back. We've run into all kinds of different types of mailboxes to go back.
So I have a question. If we live on Elm and it's very small block, do we park across at the pool and you guys are digging and doing all that? Or would
You
it-
can, but we're not going to, just safety, and we're not going to start promoting, but it may work. You know, there is a crosswalk there. It's not something we want a bunch of residents parking across 42, but if it works, Tom will coordinate that stuff. Once in a while, you run into scenarios where you work with our Parks Department and various other city property to accommodate. It really depends on location and if it can be accommodated, you know.
The police would need to know.
And we do communicate with police on the overnight parking, you know, we don't, with our overnight parking ordinances, we don't ticket for overnight because of construction. So, like I said, there's a lot of communications in the background that we work through, but Tom will work with you when that time comes on, you know, if there's a potential up there. We just didn't want to promote a bunch of people going across 42. So we do look at safety too on some of the roadways.
They do ticket actually. Because we, Redwood Drive, people used to park over on McCollum. And, when you guys were, I think we're doing the driveways and all that, and all of a sudden I noticed, people had, little notices on the windshields of their cars at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, the few we got, we didn't get addressed. They let me know.
Elm Drive is so small, so when the buses go through it,
They won't go through private construction.
Yeah, and we'll work with the busing. We work with their transportation folks on routes and changes, and the school's aware of the construction sequence already. We've met with them numerous times. They know that they're gonna have to make some adjustments during the season.
Just a quick thing, as we kind of get through these areas of impasse where we got full, we got deep utility stuff, and you'll get that notice typically the day prior, and what we'll have is kind of the general notice of between 7 and 7, we're working in front of your property, and then below that, we'll have a preferred parking area. So it's stuff where we know that the contractor's not going to be. So, and we try to get that as close as we can to the area of impact, but without being in the contractor's way. So, but with your comment there with the Redwood Park on the north side of the road, I mean, we're not going to put that under our preferred parking. We're going to try to get as close and adjacent to the area of impact as what's going on. So,
I noticed last year that people were parking in the park as a part of it.
The red one. I didn't know that.
And the same with the park, the same with the.
Down at Keller?
Park. Yeah.
No, well,
Valley Middle Park.
right by the,
There isn't
All parked behind the houses.
there's probably gonna be some strange parking.
yeah.
I mean, we're dealing with small roads, a fairly dense residential area where you don't have a lot of staging. Parking's gonna be a challenge. These guys are gonna have to put thought to temp parking zones and how they get you close, so we're not making you go too far. But it does. There's a lot of coordination there, and they'll keep communicating that stuff. Tim's right, though, with every map, if there is a spot, they do put a nice map that please try to park here during this time frame so that you can, to work around the things that are going on.
Yeah, get to know the neighbor behind you. 'Cause usually we're not working on that street. So a lot of times people will park on that street and walk through the yards.
Yeah, Tom makes a great point. A lot of times neighbors have helped out. You're all in it together, and if you do have a backyard neighbor that you're friendly with, maybe you park there and come through, because it is a nice, easy access through backyards. So that's something that's to be creative of. Well, if-
there's not getting construction, they're facing 42, so their yard's not touched.
but, that frontage road, maybe that's an option that we have to look at too. So, like I said, we're gonna be looking at all that and when we start getting into deep construction, that's when you'll start seeing, okay, this makes sense, this doesn't, maybe it across 42, maybe it's not. Those are the things that these guys will work through. Be a lot of moving parts. So if there's no more, is there more questions that the group needs to hear? Otherwise, we can,
That trail pedestrian, where's that gonna run? Can you show me the map? And it's also, that's not strictly pedestrian. Can bicycles use it and everything?
It's an 8-foot bituminous trail on the south side of Baldwin from Garden View to Hopewell. So, and it's gonna connect, there's a fence on the corner, maybe one of you's residents. The reason we went with the bituminous trail is the city will maintain it. It's off the roadway, it ties in some of the other trails that connect the school. Really, it just helps the kids. We did notice a lot of kids, bus stops were a problem. And it's bike or trail to connect the neighborhood, so yes. The 8-foot trail means that Public Works and Trails, when they take equipment, they can plow it. That was the big reason for having a trail instead of a sidewalk over there.
Now on the vibration issue, you know, you guys had the orange and you had the yellow, mainly it looks like the housing or mainly in the yellow zone. She was asking me a question, I don't think you need to do it, but do you guys recommend like taking photos or anything, pictures off the walls, or is it like a minor kind of vibration where you just kind of feel it and not?
Sometimes it can be bigger, sometimes it's smaller. You know, if Jordan and these guys are, you know that there's gonna be some, maybe if you have a sensitive picture, take it off the wall for the day.
Is that the vibration of the compactors?
And it carries through the soil. There's times that it carries further than you think, but like Jordan said, there's an immediate impact zone, and then there's receive. If you've got something sensitive, be alert, you know, be aware. We really don't want to damage things. We don't want claims. We are preventative in every way we can. We understand things happen, but we're trying to be preventative too by helping people be proactive.
She's trying to tell me anything.
Yeah.
So you're saying that primary material for the sewer was clay?
Yeah.
So from the roadway to the house, is that an issue for us to be looking into?
It could be, yeah. A lot of roots. We have photographs when we dug up all the other ones of tree roots wrapped around the services. A lot of the problems with the services were root penetration from those big trees in the boulevards. That #1 issue with sidewalk buckling, curb stops not operating, you know, your water shut off, and sewer backups is roots. That service is probably as old as the neighborhood and the house. And, you know, after this project's done, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea for you to televise to determine if the line is bad. There's a lot of methods to correct services nowadays that you don't have to dig up the whole yard. We've been going to some trenchless where you're lining it and doing things, but absolutely. We find that our community development offers different block grants and things to help neighborhoods revitalize after a street project. A lot of people go in and make improvements like that after we're here, because like I said, everything's got a new life. And your service is just as old as the rest of it, so, unless somebody's replaced it since you've been there since 1960. 67, they're 8, yeah.
But it is definitely more simple to go through, to be able to line it.
It depends. If there's roots in it, lining doesn't work. Then you should dig it up and replace it. A plumber will televise that line and tell you pretty quick what it looks like.
Is that part of the temporary thing, does your contractor televise?
No, not the private, that's private. So, you know, that's your private lot, and that's where we have to draw a line. Yeah, we only have so far that's
A few years ago, I got something in the mail that was a picture of, and it basically said, you have tree roots in here. So from the city, right? And so I did have the plumber come and he just
Wrote it up.
right? So, and he told me that it was clay, but would that have been, and the city said I was responsible for getting it fixed, so would the city have taken a picture of my private, you know?
We would have televised from the main to the property line and likely identified it.
Outside of the property
Yep.
line?
Yeah,
Because he said it was way out in the middle of the.
a lot of cases, Matt, with our utilities department, somebody will call and say, hey, I've got a backup. We got to determine, is it in the city's property or is it private? And a lot of times our utility crews will go televise or examine in the main, and then we can look at the service where it leaves to determine if it's, hey, this is us, you know, this is ours to replace, or the location. We don't typically televise into a home, so they would have had to have determined it from the property line to the main out in the street.
Then would it have been the city's responsibility?
From the property line to the street is ours.
No, no. For sanitary, the city's responsibility is the main in the middle of the street. for water, we go up to your curb stop because we have a point there that we can know as ours. On the sewer, there's no point. It's just that imaginary property, we'd have to find the property line underground, and you can't do that. So like Brandon said, what probably happened, we televised, sent a camera down our main, and when we got to where your service drops into our main, we can turn the camera and look up there, and then we saw tree roots. That's probably what they sent you, was that picture saying, hey, you've got roots up in your line as it connects to ours, so.
You'd be amazed at where roots come from. Well, you know what? You're right. Tree roots are gigantic, and like I said, one of the things that we hear a lot of feedback is, why aren't we putting trees back in the boulevards? Well, this is why. This is the disruption. We would love to have beautiful streets lined with trees, but when you start seeing the issues and the costs and the impacts, we're trying to replace trees outside of that easement area.
We're strategically doing it.
Yeah, so if maybe yours didn't think you did, but somewhere there's a lot of tree roots that.
Are you putting in an access, a sewer access port? Because I think I saw one on the new construction.
We have these utility boxes, but a lot of the utility locate rules, we have to be able to locate it. So there's a little box that goes with sewer and water.
Right above.
Clean out.
Yeah, clean out between, basically on the property line.
It's not connected though.
What is it?
It's a locate box.
There's another question.
There's a detail, we have to follow some locating guidelines for locating utilities underground. That box is to help us locate those. There isn't actually a connection to the sewer. Oh. Oh. Yeah.
I noticed like on the corner of Lowell and Elm, during the winter time and when the snow melts, it's just one big huge puddle. And I was thinking that, I was wondering if there's gonna be a drainage that's gonna be put down.
We've added storm sewer up there.
And we'll be changing the grade of the road too, so that water runs instead of sits there, getting the low spots.
So with that curb change, adding that height to the curb instead of the roll, we do have to drop the curb a little bit to make everything driveways match. We want driveways to match. We don't want to make things steeper. So to adjust that, we do adjust grades, and then we add storm sewer where areas that we wish. So we are adding storm sewer up into the upper parts, into Baldwin, and up into this pointer points everywhere but on the screen, and over on the other side. So we're addressing some of the drainage concerns. That doesn't mean it always gets there. Sometimes snow piles up in the gutters. There's always things clean, but we are improving drainage at the intersections.
Brandon, what about the ball valve
Which ball valve are
in
you?
your water main? I mean,
In the house or in the street?
yeah, in the house, because I think people need to be aware of it.
So the water meter is going to be separate. There's a primary shutoff valve that comes into your house ahead of the water meter. That is your responsibility to replace when you do the water meter. We don't touch that when we do this project. That's separate. That's a separate shutoff. We control everything from out in the street. We do have to get in and do some modifications to make sure that the temporary water can be done, and we cover that. But we do not change that main valve.
Who's responsible for that?
The residents are responsible for that one with the water meter program.
Okay, so the resident, so we have to make sure that. Later.
That's later, yep, yep.
Well, now when you're getting the water.
Thing is during, in your face.
Yep.
Right.
So Tom's gonna work with you and a plumber. He's gonna come to your house.
Right.
And we're gonna figure out how to get that temporary water connected to you safely. Once in,
I'm in phase 4.
Okay.
I'm gone most of September,
But say the next.
so we'll talk.
yeah, and we did see some people that had given us that information at the fall meeting, so we knew that there was gonna be some coordination before we're there. So you might have been one of them that wrote that. We remember that. Yeah.
So how many feet do you go in from the sidewalk that's there into the yard? Is that different for everybody?
It varies.
Okay.
It depends on the curb stop and depends on the tree location. A lot of times if the curb stop and the tree, depending on where they're at, we got to cut and grub that tree. Sometimes the curb stop just depends where it falls. Most of the time it's close to the property line, but sometimes our disturbance limits vary home to home. Well, and some of it absolutely depends on that location and how they get it dug up. We don't want to disrupt more than we have to, but sometimes we just don't have a choice when we go make that connection.
So then when you come to Baldwin right away, you will know how far you're going up into our yard.
Right, and, you know, like I
First
said,
thing.
too, yeah, and some of those trees.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, it might not make sense, but if we've got a curb stop next to it, you know, the contractor's gotta dig an 8-foot deep hole, and his guys aren't gonna climb under, in that hole on your trees, so some of them get
So you'll
taken
know,
out there.
everybody will know.
Yep, exactly, and if you didn't get notice and you're not on that, and we come across the tree, I'll certainly, obviously not, you know, let you know and get you an order for it.
Driveways are the same way. Sometimes if your shut-off's right in the driveway, we end up taking a little more driveway than we want to, but if it's concrete, we go to the nearest joint past it, make a nice clean cut. You know, like I said, you'll see a little bit of variance, but it's only by necessity, not for any other reason.
We got, I know a tree going, but there was a clump of trees and we didn't know if it was kind of on the border, we don't know if that's good or not, but you'll.
Yep, Tom will,
Okay, phase one.
1033, no.
They finish it at 1033, okay?
Yeah.
Will they put the first layer of
so, yeah, your question is, we want a hard surface before we start the next phase. So we're not going to leave it in an unfinished condition before we start moving phase.
do you think like phase one would be?
June 7th.
Our goal that we had set was phase 1A and B was to be completed around June 7th.
So the idea was 1A first and then 1B?
The reason we did 1A and B, school. So we want to get the sewer in up to Baldwin, get that so that we can get school. We didn't want to tear up 1B because we want school buses to be able to run into the school without driving through the construction zone. Otherwise, the school has nowhere to go and it starts to create other disruptive problems elsewhere.
So you're gonna do 1A first?
So we're going to do 1A, get it down, and then the buses will switch so that the intersection remains open and when. Yes, that's why we did a 1A and B. So does that answer your question?
So I can watch how they're going.
And sometimes we plan this and the school then makes adjustments. Their transportation guy will sometimes make adjustments. Last year?
Why did they put them over the school property or they can drive off?
Well, we did, but we can't access it during construction. And sometimes the direction of the mail carriers impact it with the side of the car that they're on. So there's little factors like that we looked at places that we thought were logical, and the USPS says no. So I wish I had a direct answer, but every time we think logically with the USPS, they sometimes throw us for a loop. Yep. Yep. Those are there because, to locate them. Sometimes we can't find them, so the S's and the W are a standard that City of Apple Valley's had for many, many years for locating where your sewer and water service comes into this property. Everything's consistent. That's why I said in the right of way, anything that's in our property, it's consistent for a reason because Public Works and others, we have problems finding that stuff. A lot of times, in the wintertime, we can't locate where that water shutoff is, and if there's an emergency, a lot of times the curb's clear enough that we can go out to the curb and find the W and locate it quickly. So that's been something that our utility folks appreciate. It seems like this group's starting to stray. I'm going to end the formal part. If you guys have questions, we're happy to.
Great.
So thank you. And good luck this summer. Go to Tom with problems. Go to Tom.